Sign here.
Lily, just sign the papers and this will all be over. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand pushed the documents
Across the polished mahogany desk, her diamond bracelet catching the afternoon light streaming through the lawyer's office window. Her smile was cold, calculated, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lily stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. At 58 years old, she had never imagined her life would come to this moment. Sitting across from her younger sister, while lawyers in expensive suits watched her sign away everything their parents had built. My name is Lily Morrison, and 6 months ago I thought I knew my sister. I thought blood meant something. I thought family was sacred. I was wrong about all of it. I don't understand why this is necessary, Lily said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom and Dad left the estate to both of us. We were supposed to share it, Victoria. We were supposed to take care of each other. Victoria's laugh was sharp, bitter. Take care of each other? Lily, let's be honest here. You've been struggling for years. The medical bills, the debt, that failed business venture. You're drowning, and I'm throwing you a lifeline. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat uncomfortably. He was a thin man in his 50s with graying hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Morrison, your sister has agreed to assume full responsibility for your debts in exchange for signing over your portion of the inheritance. It's actually quite generous given your financial situation. Generous. The word tasted like ash in Lily's mouth. 3 years ago, when their parents died in a car accident, Lily and Victoria had inherited everything. The family home in Connecticut worth $2.3 million. Investment portfolios, savings accounts. Their father's successful manufacturing company that Victoria now ran. Everything split 50-50. Equal shares for equal daughters. But life had other plans for Lily. Her husband James had died suddenly from a heart attack just 8 months after their parents passed. The grief had been crushing, suffocating. And then came the medical bills from his final hospital stay. The funeral costs. The discovery that James had made some terrible investment decisions in the months before his death, decisions Lily knew nothing about. Within a year, Lily was drowning in $340,000 of debt she never saw coming. Victoria had watched it all happen with those calculating eyes, watched her sister struggle and sink, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Think about it logically, Victoria continued, leaning back in her leather chair like a queen addressing a peasant. You can't manage the estate anyway. You're barely managing your own life. I'll take over your share, clear your debts, and you can start fresh. Clean slate. Clean slate. As if erasing their parents' legacy was that simple. Lily's eyes drifted to the papers again. The legal language was dense, complicated, but the meaning was crystal clear. She would sign over her entire inheritance, her half of everything, and Victoria would pay off her debts. She would walk away with nothing but the absence of financial burden. And where exactly am I supposed to live? Lily asked, her throat tight. The house was going to be mine too. Half of it was mine. Victoria's smile widened, and Lily felt a chill run down her spine. Actually, I've already arranged something for you. A lovely senior living facility just outside Hartford. Meadowbrook Manor. Very nice place, very affordable. I've already paid the first 6 months. A senior facility? Lily's voice cracked. Victoria, I'm 58 years old, not 88. I don't need assisted living. Well, given your financial instability and recent struggles with depression after James died, I thought it would be best if you had some support. Some structure. Victoria's tone was saccharine sweet, poisoned honey. Unless you'd prefer to handle this debt on your own? I hear bankruptcy is quite the process. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sign or face financial ruin alone. Mr. Henderson pushed a pen toward Lily. Mrs. Morrison, I should mention that this offer expires today. Your sister has been extraordinarily patient, but she does need to finalize the estate matters. Extraordinarily patient. Victoria had been many things over the past year, but patient wasn't one of them. She had been circling like a vulture, making subtle comments about Lily's struggles, offering help that came with strings attached, slowly tightening the noose. Lily thought about her parents. Her father, Robert, who had built his business from nothing, working 16-hour days for 40 years. Her mother, Margaret, who had been the kindest woman Lily had ever known, who always said family was everything, who had held Lily's hand at James's funeral and promised her everything would be okay. They would be devastated to see this moment, to see one daughter betraying the other so completely. But what choice did Lily have? The debt was crushing her. The collection calls came daily. She had already lost her own home to foreclosure. She was living in a cramped apartment, barely able to afford groceries. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe this was the only way. Lily picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she brought it to the paper. "That's it," Victoria cooed. "Just sign right there at the bottom. Then we can all move on with our lives." As the pen touched the paper, Lily's mind flashed back to 3 months ago. A moment she had almost forgotten in the chaos and stress of everything falling apart. She'd been going through James's old office, packing up his things, when she found an old envelope tucked in the back of his desk drawer. Inside was a letter, written in James's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before he died. "My dearest Lily," it read, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. I need you to know about the investment I made years ago before we were even married. A tech startup that my college roommate founded. I never mentioned it because it seemed like a long shot, just $50,000 I had saved up. But the company grew, Lily. It grew beyond anything I imagined. The stock split several times. Last valuation put my shares at around $15 million. I kept it separate in a private account as a surprise for our retirement. The account information is in our safety deposit box at First National. Box 247. Our anniversary date is the access code. This is our future, sweetheart. Our security. Don't let anyone tell you we have nothing. You have everything you need to live the life we dreamed of. I love you always. James." Lily had read that letter 3 times, her hands trembling, tears streaming down her face. $15 million. James had left her $15 million, and she hadn't known, hadn't told anyone.
Not Victoria. Not the lawyers. Not the creditors.
Something inside her had whispered to keep it secret. To wait. To watch. And watching had revealed everything she needed to know about her sister. Lily's pen hovered over the signature line. She looked up at Victoria, whose eyes gleamed with barely concealed triumph. This wasn't about helping her sister. This was about taking everything, about winning, about being the successful one while Lily fell apart. Victoria had always been jealous. Even as children, she resented that their parents seemed to favor Lily, the older, responsible daughter. She resented that Lily had married for love while Victoria had married for status and divorced within 3 years. She resented that Lily had been happy, truly happy, even without wealth or fame. And now Victoria saw her chance to take everything, to reduce Lily to nothing, to finally win the imaginary competition that had poisoned their relationship for decades. Lily signed the papers, every page, every initial, every acknowledgement that she was giving away her birthright, her parents' legacy, everything that should have been hers. Mr. Henderson gathered the documents efficiently. Excellent. I'll file these with the court tomorrow. The transfer of assets should be complete within 2 weeks. Victoria stood, smoothing her designer skirt. I've arranged for a car to take you to Meadowbrook Manor tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. Pack light, Lily. You won't need much there. Pack light. As if Lily's entire life could be condensed into a single suitcase. As they left the lawyer's office, Victoria touched Lily's arm, a gesture that might have looked sisterly to any observer. "This is for the best," she whispered. "You'll see. You'll be much happier without all the stress of managing money and property." "Some people just aren't cut out for it." Lily said nothing. She simply nodded, playing the role of the defeated, broken older sister who had finally accepted her fate. But inside, something hard and cold had crystallized. A plan was forming, piece by careful piece. Because Victoria had made one critical mistake. She assumed Lily was weak. She assumed Lily was desperate enough to surrender without a fight. She assumed that signing those papers meant Lily had given up. Victoria had no idea that the sister she was betraying had resources she couldn't imagine.
She had no idea that Lily had spent the last 3 months quietly consulting with her own lawyers, financial advisors, and investigators. She had no idea that every cruel word, every manipulation, every step of this betrayal had been carefully documented. And she certainly had no idea that the woman she was sending to a senior facility like discarded furniture had $15 million sitting in a private account, untouched, unknown, and about to become the foundation of the most devastating comeuppance Victoria would ever experience. As Lily walked to her car, she allowed herself the smallest smile. Let Victoria think she had won. Let her celebrate her victory, sell the family home, spend the inheritance, live her best life believing she had finally triumphed over her older sister. The fall would be so much more satisfying from that height. Tomorrow Lily would pack her bags and move into Meadowbrook Manor like an obedient, defeated woman. She would play her part perfectly. But behind the scenes, the real game was just beginning. And this time, Lily knew exactly what she was playing for. Not just money or property or revenge. She was playing for justice, for their parents' memory, for every person who had ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. Victoria wanted to bury her sister alive. Victoria wanted to bury her sister alive. What she didn't know was that Lily had already started digging her way out, and the tunnel led straight back to everything Victoria thought she had stolen. If you're enjoying this story of betrayal and the promise of justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. What comes next will show you exactly why you should never underestimate someone just because they're down. Because sometimes, the most dangerous opponent is the one who has nothing left to lose, and everything left to gain. Meadowbrook Manor smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables. The kind of place where dreams went to die quietly, forgotten by families who visited once a month out of obligation rather than love. Lily stood in the doorway of room 34B, a cramped space with pale green walls, a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a window that overlooked the parking lot. This was it. This was what Victoria considered appropriate for her older sister. Cozy, isn't it? The facility director, Mrs. Pacheco, was a round woman in her 60s with dyed red hair and a smile that had been practiced too many times. We have activities every afternoon. Bingo on Tuesdays, movie night on Fridays. You'll fit right in, dear. Lily was 58 years old. The average age at Meadowbrook Manor was 83. Thank you, Lily said quietly, setting down her single suitcase. I'm sure it will be fine. After Mrs. Pacheco left, Lily sat on the bed and stared at the blank walls. The mattress was thin, uncomfortable. She could hear someone's television blaring through the wall, a game show with canned laughter that sounded hollow and sad. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Hope you're settling in. I'm at the house right now with a realtor. We're listing it next week. Should get at least $2.5 million in this market. Talk soon. XO. Hugs and kisses from the sister who had just stolen her entire inheritance and dumped her in a glorified nursing home. Lily's jaw tightened. She typed back a simple response. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you. Let Victoria think she was broken. Let her believe the lie. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily watched her life disappear piece by piece through social media and carefully timed text messages. Victoria posted photos of herself at the family home, staging it for sale. Pictures of their mother's antique furniture being donated to charity. Videos of their father's study being emptied, decades of memories boxed up and discarded like trash. The house sold in 6 days for $2.4 million. All cash offer. Victoria posted a champagne toast on Instagram with the caption, New chapter. Sometimes you have to let go of the past to embrace the future. #blessed, #fresh start. Blessed. Victoria was blessed with stolen money and a clear conscience. But Victoria's cruelty didn't stop at theft. She needed to twist the knife deeper. She came to visit Meadowbrook Manor exactly once, 3 weeks after Lily moved in. She arrived in her new Mercedes, wearing Chanel sunglasses and carrying a Birkin bag that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Lily! Victoria's voice carried through the common room where Lily sat reading. Every head turned to watch the elegant woman in designer clothes sweep through the space like a celebrity visiting a homeless shelter. I wanted to see how you're adjusting. Lily stood slowly. Around them, elderly residents stared with a mixture of curiosity and envy at this beautiful, wealthy woman who seemed to glow with success. Victoria hugged her, a performance for the audience. You look tired, she whispered in Lily's ear, loud enough for others to hear. Are you taking your medications? Mrs. Pacheco told me you've been having trouble sleeping. Lily hadn't told Mrs. Pacheco anything about sleep trouble. Victoria had instructed the staff to report on her, treating her like a child who needed monitoring. I'm fine, Lily said evenly. Well, you don't look fine. Victoria pulled back, examining her sister with theatrical concern. You've lost weight. And your hair, when's the last time you had it done? There's a beauty shop here, isn't there? Maybe I should pay for a makeover. Would that help? The condescension dripped like poison. The other residents were watching, absorbing every word, forming opinions about poor Lily who couldn't even take care of herself. Victoria stayed for exactly 20 minutes, long enough to establish her role as the caring sister, making sure the unstable sibling was properly cared for. Before she left, she pressed an envelope into Lily's hand. A little spending money, she said. For the vending machines or whatever you need. Inside the envelope was $50. $50 from the woman who had just stolen over $3 million. After Victoria left, Lily went back to her room and sat on the narrow bed. She opened her laptop, the one piece of technology she'd kept, and logged into the secure email account her attorney had set up. Robert Chen was nothing like Mr. Henderson, Victoria's pompous lawyer. Robert was 42, sharp as a razor, and specialized in cases involving financial fraud and elder abuse. Lily had found him 4 months ago, back when she first read James's letter and realized she needed to understand her options before anyone knew about the money. Her email to Robert was brief. She took everything. House sold. I'm in the facility. Time to move forward? His response came within an hour. Not yet. Let her get comfortable. Let her spend. The further she goes, the harder she falls. Trust the process, Lily. We're building something she won't see coming. Trust the process. Lily had been trusting it for months now, watching and waiting and documenting every cruel text, every dismissive comment, every legal irregularity, and how Victoria had manipulated the estate transfer. Because here's what Victoria didn't know. What nobody except Robert Chen and Lily's private financial advisor knew. When Lily had found James's letter and accessed the safety deposit box, she didn't just find account information. She found detailed records of James's investment strategy, his careful documentation of every transaction, and most importantly, his handwritten notes explaining that this money was specifically designated for Lily's sole use, completely separate from any marital or estate assets. The $15 million was untouchable by creditors because James had structured it through an irrevocable trust years before his death. Lily wasn't drowning in debt at all. She could have paid off every penny she owed with a single phone call. But doing that would have revealed the money's existence. And once Victoria knew about it, she would have found a way to sink her claws into it. She would have challenged the trust, claimed James had used marital funds, tied everything up in courts for years. So Lily had made a different choice. She let Victoria believe the lie. She played the desperate debtor, the struggling widow, the sister who had no options left. She signed away an inheritance she didn't need in exchange for debt relief she didn't require. And in doing so, she had given Victoria all the rope necessary to hang herself. Because Victoria hadn't just taken the inheritance. She had done it through coercion, through manipulation, through exploiting what she believed was her sister's vulnerable mental state. Robert Chen had mountains of evidence. Text messages where Victoria threatened bankruptcy. Recordings of conversations where Victoria implied Lily was mentally unstable. Emails where Victoria pressured Mr. Henderson to expedite the transfer before Lily changed her mind. In legal terms, it was called undue influence, and it was very, very illegal. But Lily wasn't ready to strike yet. Not until Victoria had spent enough of the money that returning it would destroy her. Not until Victoria had lived her best life just long enough to make losing it absolutely devastating. At Meadowbrook Manor, Lily fell into a routine. She woke early, ate the bland cafeteria breakfast, attended the pointless activities that Mrs. Pacheco organized. She played bingo with people who had forgotten her name by the next day. She watched movies she'd seen a dozen times. She existed in this gray, diminished space, and she let everyone believe this was her life now. But every evening, back in her room, Lily became someone else entirely. She monitored Victoria's social media obsessively. She tracked every purchase, every vacation, every expensive dinner documented with filtered photos and humble brag captions. Victoria had quit her job at their father's company, selling her stake to the board for $1.8 million. She'd bought a penthouse in downtown Hartford for $950,000, all cash. She was dating a plastic surgeon named Dr. Marcus Webb, flashing his Rolex and Porsche all over Instagram like trophies. The money was flowing out like water, and Victoria was drowning in the luxury of it, posting about her self-made success and financial independence, as if she'd earned any of it through her own merit rather than through betraying her sister. One evening, Lily received a group text. Victoria had added her to a family chat with their cousins, aunts, and uncles. Just wanted to share some exciting news. Victoria's message began. I'm donating $100,000 to the Margaret and Robert Morrison Memorial Scholarship Fund in our parents' names. I know they would have wanted their legacy to help young people achieve their dreams. So proud to honor them this way. The responses flooded in immediately. How generous! Your parents would be so proud. Victoria, you're amazing. Lily stared at her phone, rage burning in her chest. Victoria was using stolen money to buy the family's admiration, to cement her image as the good daughter, the successful one, the generous philanthropist. And the scholarship was being funded with money that should have been half Lily's. She typed a response. That's beautiful, Victoria. Mom and Dad would love that. More lies, more performance, more waiting. But something else was happening at Meadowbrook Manor. Something Lily hadn't expected. She was making a friend. Dorothy Chen was 79 years old, sharp as a tack, and completely unimpressed by the facility's attempts to infantilize its residents. She was also Robert Chen's mother. My son told me about you, Dorothy had whispered one day during bingo, sliding into the chair next to Lily. Said you were here playing the long game? Smart woman. Lily had frozen, looking around nervously, but Dorothy just laughed. Relax, nobody here pays attention to anything except their pills and their TV shows. Your secret's safe. Over the following weeks, Dorothy became Lily's confidant, the only person in this place who knew the truth. She was also useful in ways Lily hadn't anticipated. Dorothy had been a paralegal for 40 years before retiring. She knew law, knew procedure, knew exactly how to spot the holes in Victoria's facade. Your sister's getting sloppy, Dorothy observed one afternoon, reviewing some documents on Lily's laptop. Look at this expense report from the estate. She's billing personal purchases to your father's company account. That's embezzlement, honey. Add it to the list. The list was growing longer every day. Tax fraud. Misappropriation of estate funds. Violation of fiduciary duty. Undue influence. Elder abuse. Technically, since Meadowbrook Manor was classified as an elder care facility and Victoria had coerced Lily into residing there, Robert Chen was building a case that would destroy Victoria financially, professionally, and legally. But the timing had to be perfect. 6 months into Lily's residency at Meadowbrook Manor, Victoria announced her engagement to Dr. Marcus Webb. The ring was 8 carats, obscene and flashy. The wedding was planned for the Plaza Hotel in New York. Black tie, 300 guests. $250,000 budget. Victoria sent Lily an invitation. A pity invitation. The kind you send to an embarrassing relative you hope won't actually attend. I'd love for you to be there. Victoria's accompanying text read. I know travel is hard for you these days, but it would mean so much. Maybe Mrs. Pacheco can arrange transportation? The implication was clear. Lily was too fragile, too diminished, too pathetic to navigate a wedding on her own. Lily confirmed her attendance immediately. Because by the time that wedding arrived, Victoria's world would already be collapsing. And Lily wanted a front row seat. What Victoria didn't understand, what she would never understand until it was far too late, was that Lily had learned something crucial during her years with James. Her late husband had been a gentleman, quiet and thoughtful. But he'd grown up poor and fought his way to success through patience and strategy. "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake," James used to say, quoting Napoleon. "Let them build their empire on sand. Then just wait for the tide." Victoria had built her empire on stolen money, illegal transfers, and documented fraud. She'd built it in full view of cameras, social media, witnesses, and paper trails. She'd built it on sand. And Lily could feel the tide beginning to turn, cold and inexorable, ready to wash everything away. 3 months before Victoria's wedding, Lily received a visitor she hadn't expected. Martin Webb, Marcus's younger brother, appeared at Meadowbrook Manor one Tuesday afternoon, looking uncomfortable in a designer suit that didn't quite fit his personality. "Mrs. Morrison?" He approached hesitantly, glancing around the common room like he was afraid of catching something. "I'm Martin Webb. I need to talk to you about my brother and your sister." Lily set down her book slowly, studying him. Martin was 36, softer around the edges than his polished surgeon brother, with kind eyes that seemed genuinely troubled. "Let's take a walk," Lily suggested. They strolled through Meadowbrook's small garden, away from curious ears. Martin was silent for a long moment before finally speaking. "My brother's making a mistake," he said quietly. "Victoria, Look, I don't know how to say this delicately. She's spending money like it's infinite. Marcus thinks she's wealthy from her family, but I did some digging. Everything came from your parents' estate, right? The estate you signed over to her?" Lily's heart quickened, but her face remained calm. "That's correct. She's burning through it." Martin pulled out his phone, showing Lily a series of screenshots, credit card statements he'd somehow accessed. 200,000 on jewelry in 3 months. Another 150 on clothes. She bought a Bentley last week, 60,000 on the wedding venue deposit alone. Marcus thinks she has endless family money, but at this rate, ... double quotes. "Why are you telling me this?" Lily asked carefully. Martin's jaw tightened. "Because my brother's a good surgeon but a terrible judge of character. And because I heard Victoria talking on the phone last week. She was laughing with someone about how she finally got rid of the dead weight. She meant you, Mrs. Morrison. She called you dead weight." The cruelty shouldn't have surprised Lily anymore, but it still stung. Still, this was useful. Very useful. "I appreciate you coming," Lily said. "But your brother is an adult. If he wants to marry Victoria, that's his choice." Martin looked frustrated. "Doesn't it bother you what she did?" "Every day," Lily admitted, and for a moment, she let the mask slip. Let him see the steel underneath. But some fights aren't won by charging forward. Some fights require patience. Something in her tone made Martin pause. He studied her face, and Lily saw the exact moment understanding dawned. "You're not really broken, are you?" he whispered. Lily's smile was thin. "I didn't say that. But I appreciate your concern, Martin. Truly." He left looking confused, but Lily knew he wouldn't interfere. He'd done his duty by warning her. What happened next was out of his hands. That evening, Lily met with Robert Chen in a private conference room he'd reserved at the public library. Dorothy came too, eager to see the case files her son had been building. Robert spread documents across the table like a general planning a military campaign. "We have everything we need," he said. "Tax evasion, fraudulent estate transfers, elder abuse, embezzlement from your father's company before she sold it." "But there's a problem." "What problem?" Dorothy demanded. "The wedding." Robert tapped a calendar. "If we move now, we stop the wedding, freeze her assets, and she immediately knows we're coming. She'll lawyer up, claim ignorance, drag this out for years. But if we wait until after the wedding ... she's committed fraud to secure a marriage," Lily finished. "Marriage fraud on top of everything else." Robert nodded. "Exactly. Plus, Marcus Webb has significant assets of his own. Once they're married, his money gets tangled up in this too."
His lawyers will be motivated to settle quickly, rather than let this become a public scandal that damages his medical practice. You're going to destroy both their lives, Dorothy observed, not disapprovingly. I'm going to get back what's mine, Lily corrected. What happens to them after that is their own doing. Over the next weeks, Lily's preparation intensified. She hired a private investigator named Sarah Kim, a former FBI forensic accountant who specialized in tracking hidden assets. Sarah's job was simple. Document every penny Victoria spent, every luxury purchase, every expensive dinner, every first-class flight. The report Sarah delivered was damning. In 8 months, Victoria had spent $1.4 million. The house sale had brought in $2.4 million. But after paying off Lily's debts, $340,000, Victoria had netted about $2 million from that transaction. Add the $1, $8 million from selling the company stake, and Victoria had burned through nearly 40% of her liquid assets in less than a year. She's not just spending, Sarah explained, reviewing her findings with Lily. She's gambling. I traced $50,000 to an online poker site. Another $20,000 to Atlantic City casinos. She's got a problem, Mrs. Morrison, a serious problem. That was new and devastating. Because gambling debts were different from regular spending. They implied addiction, lack of control, desperation beneath the polished surface. Can you document the gambling? Lily asked. Already have. Bank transfers, casino comp accounts, betting histories. It's all time-stamped and verified. Perfect. Victoria wasn't just cruel and greedy. She was reckless and self-destructive. The pieces were falling into place beautifully. But Victoria's behavior was escalating in other ways too. She started bringing her friends to Meadowbrook Manor, touring them through the facility like it was a zoo. This is where my poor sister lives now, Victoria would say, her voice dripping with performative sympathy. It's so sad what happens when people can't manage their own lives. But at least she's safe here, cared for. The friends would nod, looking at Lily with pity, never suspecting that the woman in the simple cardigan and comfortable shoes was worth more than all of them combined. One afternoon, Victoria brought Dr. Marcus Webb himself. He was tall, handsome in a manufactured way, with perfect teeth and careful hair. He shook Lily's hand with the kind of grip doctors use on patients they're trying to reassure. Victoria's told me so much about you, Marcus said, his tone perfectly calibrated between professional and condescending. It's wonderful that you have such a caring sister to make sure you're looked after. It is, Lily agreed, playing her part. I'm very lucky. Victoria beamed, basking in the praise, completely missing the way Lily's eyes had gone cold and hard. That evening, Lily received an unexpected email. It was from Denise Hammond, her father's former executive assistant. Denise had worked for Robert Morrison for 23 years before retiring when he died. Mrs. Morrison, the email began. I heard through the grapevine what happened with the estate. I need to talk to you about some things your father told me before he died. Things Victoria doesn't know. Can we meet? They met at a small cafe far from Meadowbrook Manor. Denise was in her late 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. She ordered coffee and got straight to business. Your father knew, Denise said without preamble. About Victoria, I mean. Her jealousy, her resentment. The last year of his life, he changed some things in his estate planning. Did you know that? Lily's pulse quickened. What do you mean? He set up a failsafe. A provision in the trust that would trigger if certain conditions were met. Denise pulled out a folder. If either daughter attempted to defraud or coerce the other regarding the inheritance, a secondary investigation would be triggered, and the estate would be re-evaluated. Your mother didn't know about it. He kept it separate, handled through a different law firm. Why didn't this come up when Victoria took everything? Because it required a formal complaint to be filed. Your father's instructions were specific. The wronged party had to actively invoke the failsafe. He didn't want to assume the worst of either of you, but he wanted protection in place just in case. Denise slid the folder across the table. This is everything. The trust documents, the contact information for the law firm,
The evidence your father had already started collecting about Victoria's financial irresponsibility. Lily opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were bank statements showing Victoria had been embezzling from the company even before their parents died. Credit card bills their father had discovered and documented. A letter he'd written, dated 1 week before the accident, expressing his concerns about Victoria's gambling and his intention to restructure her inheritance to include oversight and limitations.
He never got to implement the changes, Denise said softly. The accident happened too fast. But the framework was there. And now you can use it. Lily looked up, tears in her eyes. Why are you giving me this now? Because your father was a good man who built something meaningful and Victoria is destroying it. Because you deserve better than what she did to you. And because ... Denise's voice hardened. I saw her at a restaurant last week, drunk, laughing about how she put the burden in a home where she belongs. She meant you, Lily. She called you a burden. There it was again. The casual cruelty. The complete lack of remorse or love. Thank you, Lily whispered. You have no idea what this means. I think I do. Denise stood to leave, then paused.
Your father used to say that patience was the greatest virtue in business. That the best deals came to those who waited for exactly the right moment.
I think he'd be proud of how patient you're being, Lily. After Denise left, Lily sat in the cafe for another hour, reading through her father's documents. He had known.
He had seen Victoria's true nature and tried to protect against it.
And now, from beyond the grave, he was giving Lily the weapons she needed to make things right.
Back at Meadowbrook Manor, Lily found Dorothy in the common room, pretending to watch Wheel of Fortune while actually reading a legal thriller.
We have it all now, Lily said quietly, sitting beside her. Everything we need. Dorothy closed her book. When? The wedding is in 6 weeks. We wait until 3 days after. Let them have their honeymoon in Bali. Let Victoria think she's won completely. Then we strike.
You're sure about the timing?
Lily thought about Victoria's cruel texts, her performative sympathy, her theft of their parents' legacy. She thought about being called deadweight and a burden. She thought about 8 months in this facility, playing the role of the defeated sister while Victoria lived high on stolen money. I'm sure, Lily said. Let her have her perfect wedding. Let her have her moment of absolute triumph. The higher she climbs, the further she fall.
Dorothy smiled grimly. Your father would be proud.
Your husband, too. That night, alone in her room, Lily pulled out the one photo she'd kept of James. He was smiling in it. That gentle smile that had made her fall in love with him 30 years ago. She touched his face through the glass. Almost there, she whispered. Almost time to show them what we built together. What you built for us. The money James had left wasn't just wealth. It was freedom. It was power.
It was the ability to fight back against someone who thought she was too broken to resist.
Victoria had made a critical miscalculation. She'd assumed that because Lily was grieving and struggling, she was also stupid. She'd assumed that desperation meant defeat. She'd assumed that signing papers meant surrender. But Lily had been a chess player since childhood. Their father had taught both daughters the game. But only Lily had truly understood the lesson. Sometimes you sacrifice a queen to win the game.
Victoria had taken the bait perfectly.
She'd grabbed the inheritance, spent it recklessly, documented her cruelty on social media,
and never once looked back to see if her victim was actually down for the count.
In 6 weeks, Victoria would marry her doctor in a lavish ceremony funded by stolen money. She would post photos of her perfect life, her perfect dress, her perfect happiness built on the ruins of her sister's dignity. And 3 days after that, Lily would rise from the ashes Victoria thought she'd created and burn Victoria's entire world to the ground. Not with anger, not with violence, but with lawyers, documentation, evidence, and the kind of systematic legal destruction that comes from patience and preparation. Victoria wanted Lily buried. What she didn't realize was that she'd buried her alive, and Lily had spent 8 months digging her way back up, tunnel by careful tunnel, making sure that when she emerged, she'd be standing on top of everything Victoria thought she'd stolen. The game was almost over. Victoria just didn't know it yet.
The Plaza Hotel wedding was everything Victoria had dreamed of. Crystal chandeliers, white roses imported from Ecuador, a string quartet playing while 300 guests sipped champagne that cost more per bottle than most people's weekly groceries. Lily attended, wearing a simple dress Dorothy had helped her pick out. She sat in the back row, exactly where Victoria had assigned her, and watched her sister glide down the aisle in a Vera Wang gown that cost $80,000. Victoria looked radiant, triumphant, like a woman who had finally achieved everything she deserved. When she passed Lily's row, she glanced over and smiled, a small victorious smile that said, "Look at me. Look at what I have. Look at what you'll never be." Lily smiled back. Just 3 more days. The reception was obscene in its extravagance. A 10-tier cake, lobster and filet mignon, an open bar with top-shelf everything. Victoria's toast to her new husband was filled with phrases about overcoming obstacles and leaving the past behind, and building the future we deserve. She never once mentioned their parents. Never acknowledged where the money for the spectacle had come from. Lily left before the dancing started, citing fatigue. Victoria barely noticed, too busy posing for photos and accepting congratulations from guests who had no idea they were celebrating a wedding funded by theft and fraud. 3 days later, Victoria and Marcus returned from their Bali honeymoon tanned and relaxed. They posted photos of pristine beaches, luxury resorts, couples massages, and sunset dinners. The caption on Victoria's Instagram read, "Paradise with my forever person." Life is so beautiful when you let go of negativity and embrace abundance. #grateful, #new beginnings. That afternoon, Victoria returned to her penthouse to find 2 people waiting in the lobby. A woman in a dark suit holding a briefcase and a police officer. "Victoria Morrison Webb?" the woman asked. "Yes?" Victoria's smile was uncertain now, confused. "I'm Agent Patricia Foster, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. This is Officer Ramirez. We have a warrant to search your residence and seize financial records related to suspected tax fraud and embezzlement. You need to come with us." The color drained from Victoria's face. "There must be some mistake. I haven't done anything wrong." Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent," Officer Ramirez began. The lobby security cameras captured everything. Victoria's shock morphing into panic, then into rage. Her voice rising as she demanded to speak to her lawyer, as she insisted this was impossible, as she threatened lawsuits and consequences. They escorted her out in handcuffs. The photos hit social media within an hour, uploaded by neighbors and bystanders who recognized the bride from the lavish wedding just days before. Marcus Webb received the call while at the hospital performing a routine surgery. His hands were steady as always, but his mind was reeling. Tax fraud? Embezzlement? What had his wife been hiding? By the time he finished the surgery, the truth was spreading like wildfire online. Someone had leaked documents. Bank statements showing suspicious transfers. Evidence of gambling debts. Records of falsified expense reports from Victoria's time at her father's company. Screenshots of text messages where Victoria bragged about manipulating her pathetic sister out of her inheritance. The hashtag Victoria Webb exposed was trending. But the real devastation was only beginning. Robert Chen filed a civil lawsuit that same afternoon. The complaint was 47 pages long, meticulously detailed and absolutely damning. It outlined every illegal action Victoria had taken. The coercion of Lily into signing away her inheritance. The exploitation of Lily's grief and financial stress. The fraudulent representation of Lily's mental state to justify placing her in assisted living. The embezzlement from the family company, the tax evasion, the misappropriation of estate funds. And attached to the lawsuit were exhibits. Hundreds of them. Text messages where Victoria threatened Lily with bankruptcy. Recordings of phone calls where Victoria pressured lawyers to expedite the estate transfer. Social media posts documenting Victoria's excessive spending. Her father's secret trust documents proving he'd intended to prevent exactly this kind of abuse. Denise Hammond's sworn testimony about Victoria's embezzlement. The private investigator's report tracking every dollar Victoria had spent. Martin Webb's statement about Victoria calling Lily dead weight, every cruel word, every manipulative action. Every lie. All documented, time-stamped, and presented in black and white for the world to see. Victoria was released on bail that evening, returning home to find Marcus waiting with divorce papers. "You lied to me," he said, his voice cold and clinical, "about everything. Your family, your money, your sister. You made me an accessory to fraud." "Marcus, please, I can explain," the hospital board called. "They're concerned about the publicity, about my judgment. I'm taking a leave of absence because of you." "Because you're a thief and a liar." He set the papers on the counter. "Sign them. My lawyers will be in touch about the asset division. And Victoria, don't try to touch any of my money. It's already protected." He left, just like that. 72 hours of marriage over. Victoria's phone was exploding with messages. Friends distancing themselves. Family members demanding explanations. Her lawyer telling her the case was extremely serious, and she should prepare for significant consequences. And then came the call from an unknown number. Victoria answered with shaking hands. "Hello?" "Hello, Victoria." Lily's voice was calm, steady, utterly composed. "We need to talk. You." The word came out like venom. "You did this. You set me up. I documented your crimes," Lily corrected. "There's a difference. Every text message where you threatened me, I kept them. Every cruel comment, recorded. Every illegal transfer, traced. You did this to yourself, Victoria. I just made sure everyone could see it. You were broke. You were desperate. You signed those papers willingly." "I was never broke." Lily let that sink in for a moment. "James left me $15 million in a private trust. I could have paid off my debts with one phone call, but I wanted to see who you really were. And you showed me, Victoria. You showed everyone." The silence on the other end was deafening. You had money the whole time? The whole time. And I used it wisely. I hired the best lawyers, the best investigators, the best forensic accountants. I documented everything you did, every step of the way. And now, I'm taking back what you stole. With interest. Victoria's voice cracked. Mom and Dad would be ashamed of you. Destroying your own sister like this. Mom and Dad are dead because of a car accident, but they'd be heartbroken by what you became. Do you want to know what I found in Dad's files? He knew you were embezzling from the company. He was planning to cut you out of the inheritance completely before the accident. You didn't just steal from me, Victoria. You stole from his memory, his legacy, everything he built. You can't prove. I can prove everything. I have Dad's documentation. Denise Hammond's testimony. Your own social media posts. Your gambling debts. Your tax fraud. All of it. Lily's voice hardened. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every penny you took from the estate. You're going to sell the penthouse, the Bentley, every designer bag, and piece of jewelry you bought with stolen money. You're going to liquidate everything. And if I don't, then I let the IRS and the district attorney finish what they started. Tax evasion carries up to 5 years in federal prison, Victoria. Elder abuse is another felony. Fraud, embezzlement, coercion, ... By the time they're done adding charges, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. Or you can settle with me, return what you stole plus damages, accept a plea deal for probation, and walk away with your freedom if not your dignity. Victoria was crying now, ugly, desperate sobs. You're destroying me. No, I'm getting justice. There's a difference. Please, Lily. I'm your sister. We're family. You gave up the right to call yourself my sister when you called me deadweight. When you laughed about putting me in a home. When you stole our parents' legacy and spent it on champagne and designer clothes while I ate cafeteria food in a facility for people twice my age. Lily's voice was ice. You wanted me buried, Victoria. You just forgot to make sure I was actually dead first. The call ended. Over the next week, Victoria's world collapsed in spectacular fashion. The penthouse was seized pending the investigation. Her bank accounts were frozen. The Bentley was repossessed. Every asset she'd acquired with the stolen money was cataloged and prepared for liquidation. The media coverage was relentless. Socialite accused of defrauding dying sister. Wedding funded by stolen inheritance ends in arrest. Sister's cruel betrayal exposed through secret evidence. The court of public opinion was even harsher. Victoria's Instagram, once full of luxury and glamour, was now flooded with comments calling her a monster, a thief, a disgrace. She deleted her accounts, but screenshots lived forever. Marcus Webb filed for annulment, claiming fraud in the inducement of marriage. His lawyers moved with brutal efficiency, protecting every penny of his assets and distancing him from Victoria's legal troubles as fast as legally possible. The family turned their backs completely. Cousins who had praised her generosity now refused her calls. Aunts and uncles who had admired her success publicly condemned her actions. The $100,000 scholarship fund she'd created in their parents' names was dissolved. The money returned to the estate as stolen property. 2 weeks after the arrest, Victoria's lawyer negotiated a settlement. She would plead guilty to lesser charges, return $2.8 million to Lily, accept 5 years probation, and perform 2,000 hours of community service. In exchange, the most serious felony charges would be dropped. She had no choice but to accept. The alternative was prison. The day Victoria signed the settlement agreement, Lily was present in the conference room. Victoria looked like a ghost, her designer clothes replaced by an off-the-rack suit, her perfectly styled hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of the makeup that used to hide any imperfection. "I hope you're happy," Victoria said bitterly, her pen hovering over the signature line. Lily met her eyes without flinching. "I'm not happy, I'm vindicated." "There's a difference," Victoria signed. The lawyer notarized the documents. It was done. As Victoria stood to leave, Lily spoke one more time. "For what it's worth, I would have shared everything with you. If you'd just asked. If you'd treated me like a sister instead of an obstacle. But you chose cruelty over kindness, and now you're living with the consequences." Victoria didn't respond. She walked out of the conference room and out of Lily's life, headed toward a future of garnished wages, community service, and the permanent stain of her crimes. Lily watched her go, feeling not triumph but a deep settled sense of justice finally served. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to see how people rebuild after betrayal. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's showing the world who you really are. Outside the law offices, Lily found Dorothy waiting with Robert Chen. "It's done," Lily said simply. Dorothy hugged her. "Your father would be proud. Your James would be proud." "They taught me patience," Lily said. "And patience won." Robert Chen smiled. "What's next for you, Lily?" She looked up at the sky, breathing in the first truly free breath she'd taken in 8 months. "Next?" Lily smiled. "Next, I start living again." 18 months after the settlement, Lily stood in the lobby of a newly renovated community center in Hartford, watching families stream through the doors for the grand opening celebration. The building had once been abandoned, a victim of decades of urban neglect. Now it gleamed with fresh paint, new windows, and a sign that read, "The Margaret and Robert Morrison Community Center." This was what their parents' money was meant for. Not penthouse apartments or luxury cars, but something that would actually help people, actually honor their legacy. Lily had used $2 million of the settlement money to purchase and renovate the building. Inside were classrooms for job training, a legal aid clinic offering free consultations, financial literacy workshops, and a grief counseling center. Everything Lily wished had existed when she was drowning after James died. "It's perfect," Dorothy said, standing beside her. At 80, Dorothy had officially come out of retirement to serve as the center's volunteer coordinator. "Your parents would love this." "I hope so." Lily watched a young mother sign her children up for after-school tutoring, her face bright with hope. "I spent so long being angry about what Victoria took. But the truth is she did me a favor." Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "How do you figure that?" "She showed me who I really am. Not the grieving widow, not the struggling debtor, not the victim. She showed me I'm someone who survives, who plans, who fights back when it matters." Lily smiled. "I'm stronger than I ever knew." The center's success had brought media attention. But this time, the coverage was positive. Local woman transforms betrayal into community hope. Inheritance fraud victim builds legacy center for struggling families. From nursing home to philanthropy. Lily Morrison's remarkable journey. Lily had been interviewed by newspapers, local news stations, even a national morning show. Each time she told the story simply and honestly. Her sister had betrayed her, but she'd had resources Victoria didn't know about, and she'd used those resources not for revenge but for justice and healing. The public response had been overwhelming. Donations poured into the community center. Volunteers signed up. Local businesses offered partnerships. People who had survived their own family betrayals reached out, sharing their stories, finding comfort in knowing they weren't alone. But the most meaningful recognition came from unexpected places. Denise Hammond, her father's former assistant, hosted a small dinner party 3 months after the center opened. She'd invited Robert Morrison's old business associates, the people who had known him best. To Lily, one of them toasted, raising his glass. Robert always said you had his heart and his conscience. He'd be so proud of what you've built. Another colleague spoke up, an older gentleman who'd worked with her father for 30 years. I knew Victoria too, you know. Always felt something was off about that girl. Too focused on appearances, not enough on substance. But you, Lily? You're exactly like your dad. Patient, strategic, kind when it counts. These were her father's peers. People who understood business and legacy and what it meant to build something meaningful. Their approval meant more than any media coverage ever could. Lily had also reconnected with extended family, the cousins and aunts who'd been fooled by Victoria's performance. At first, she'd been hesitant, unsure if she could trust them after they'd praised Victoria's false generosity. But her cousin Rachel had reached out with a heartfelt apology. We should have asked questions. Should have checked on you. We believed Victoria's lies because it was easier than facing the truth. I'm so sorry, Lily. The family relationships had been rebuilt slowly, carefully. Sunday dinners became regular events. Holiday gatherings no longer carried the tension of Victoria's presence. They talked about Margaret and Robert honestly now, sharing memories without the filter of Victoria's revisionist history. As for Victoria herself, the consequences had been permanent and devastating. She'd been forced to take a job as an administrative assistant at a medical billing company, the only place that would hire someone with her criminal record. The pay was $42,000 a year, barely enough to cover rent on her small apartment in a neighborhood she once would have sneered at. Her probation officer required monthly check-ins. Her community service involved cleaning highways and serving meals at homeless shelters. A far cry from the charity galas she used to attend as a guest of honor. But the social consequences were worse than the legal ones. Victoria had been completely ostracized. Her former friends blocked her on social media. Marcus had remarried, posting photos of his new wife, a pediatric surgeon who apparently shared his values. Every image was a reminder of what Victoria had lost. She'd tried to rebuild her reputation, creating a new Instagram account under a different name. But someone always recognized her, and within days the comments would fill with reminders of what she'd done. Isn't this the woman who stole from her dying sister? She belongs in prison, not on social media. Eventually, she stopped trying. She lived quietly, anonymously, working her modest job and serving her probation, stripped of everything that had once defined her identity. Lily had seen her only once since the settlement, a chance encounter at a grocery store. Victoria had been in the produce section, carefully comparing prices on apples, her cart containing generic brands and sale items. She looked older, worn down, the expensive skincare routine abandoned along with everything else. Their eyes had met across the aisle. Victoria's face flushed with shame, and she'd turned her cart quickly, hurrying away without a word. Lily hadn't followed. There was nothing left to say. Victoria was living the consequences of her choices, and that was justice enough. The moment that truly marked Lily's transformation came exactly 2 years after Victoria's arrest. Lily was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference, sharing her story with 500 women who'd faced their own challenges and betrayals. She stood on that stage, microphone in hand, and told the truth. All of it. The grief after James died, The debt she thought would destroy her. The sister who'd exploited her suffering. The 8 months in Meadowbrook Manor playing a role while building her case. And finally, the moment everything turned around. "Here's what I learned," Lily said, looking out at the sea of faces. "Betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond to it does." When my sister tried to bury me, she didn't realize she was actually planting seeds. Seeds of resilience, of strategy, of strength I didn't know I possessed. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Victoria thought she was taking everything from me. My inheritance, my dignity, my future. But you can't take someone's worth. You can't steal their character. And you absolutely cannot destroy someone who refuses to stay down. Applause rippled through the crowd. I spent 8 months in a facility meant for people decades older than me, eating terrible food, attending pointless bingo games, being treated like I was helpless and broken. And you know what I was really doing? I was documenting, planning, preparing, building a case that would not only get my money back but would expose every illegal thing my sister had done. Lily paused, remembering those long evenings in room 34B, working on her laptop while the sounds of game shows filtered through the walls. Patience isn't passive. Strategic silence isn't weakness. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is wait for exactly the right moment to strike. My husband used to say, "Never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake." So I didn't. I let my sister spend, brag, post on social media, document her own crimes. And when the time was right, I used all of it against her. The applause grew louder. Today, my sister works an entry-level job, lives in a small apartment, and has a criminal record that will follow her forever. Not because I destroyed her, but because she destroyed herself. I just made sure everyone could see it. Lily's voice softened. And me? I used the money my late husband left me to build something meaningful. A community center that helps people who are struggling like I once was. Legal aid for those who can't afford it. Job training. Grief counseling. All the resources I wished existed when I was at my lowest point. She looked around the room. That's the real revenge. Not tearing someone else down, but building yourself up so high that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. Not becoming bitter, but becoming better. Not letting cruelty make you cruel, but letting it make you kind in ways that actually matter. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached Lily with their own stories. Daughters betrayed by mothers. Sisters betrayed by brothers. Friends betrayed by business partners. Each one looking for hope, for proof that survival was possible, that justice could be achieved without losing yourself in the process. "You gave me my fight back," one woman said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I had to just accept what my family did to me. But you showed me I don't. Thank you." This, Lily realized, was the true victory. Not the money returned or Victoria's punishment, but the ripple effect of showing others that betrayal didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of something stronger, something better. That evening, Lily returned to her new home, a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood that felt nothing like the institutional walls of Meadowbrook Manor. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dorothy. "Saw your speech online. You were magnificent. James and your parents would be so proud." Lily smiled, typing back. "Thank you for everything. For being there when I needed someone to know the truth. That's what family does," Dorothy replied. Real family, real family. Not the sister who'd shared her blood but betrayed her trust, but the people who'd stood by her when it mattered. Dorothy and Robert Chen, who'd built her case. Denise Hammond, who'd provided crucial evidence. Martin Webb, who'd risked family conflict to warn her. Sarah Kim, the investigator who'd tracked every dollar. Even the other residents at Meadowbrook Manor who'd become her friends during those 8 months of strategic waiting. These were the people who'd seen her not as broken or weak, but as someone playing the long game. Someone who understood that revenge was a dish best served cold, and justice required patience. Lily had learned something profound through this ordeal. Your worst moments don't define you unless you let them. Victoria had tried to reduce her to nothing, tried to make her a cautionary tale about failure and weakness. Instead, Lily had become an inspiration. A symbol of resilience. Proof that strategic thinking and moral clarity could defeat even the cruelest betrayal. She tried to destroy me, but she actually freed me, Lily thought, sipping her wine as the sun sank below the horizon. She took everything I thought mattered and forced me to discover what actually does. The community center would open its doors to thousands of families over the coming years. Lily's story would inspire countless others facing their own betrayals. And Victoria would live with the permanent consequences of choosing greed over love, cruelty over compassion, temporary satisfaction over lasting integrity. That was the lesson, really. The one Lily wanted everyone to understand. You can steal someone's money. You can take their property. You can even damage their reputation temporarily. But you cannot steal their dignity unless they give it to you. And you absolutely cannot destroy someone who has the patience to outlast you, the intelligence to outmaneuver you, and the resources to ensure justice prevails. Victoria had thought she was burying her sister. What she'd actually done was give Lily the motivation to rise higher than she ever would have otherwise. And in the end, that was the greatest irony of all. The sister who tried to diminish Lily had accidentally created her finest transformation. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, remember this. Your story isn't over just because someone tried to write your ending. You get to decide how it concludes. And sometimes, the best way to win isn't through immediate confrontation, but through patient preparation and strategic action when the time is right. Subscribe to hear more stories of people who turned their darkest moments into their greatest triumphs. Because betrayal is common, but what you do with it, that's what makes you extraordinary. Lily Morrison had been betrayed by blood, buried by cruelty, and counted out by everyone except herself. Now she stood in the sunlight of her rebuilt life, proof that patience, preparation, and principle will always defeat greed, cruelty, and short-sighted selfishness. Victoria had wanted to erase her sister. Instead, she'd made her unforgettable. And that was the best revenge of all. The complete story has been delivered 5 blocks, approximately 30,000 characters total. Story summary. Lily Morrison, 58, was betrayed by her sister Victoria, who coerced her into signing away a $3 million inheritance by exploiting her grief and financial struggles after her husband James's death. Victoria placed Lily in a senior facility and took everything. What Victoria didn't know, James had left Lily $15 million in a secret trust. Lily deliberately let Victoria believe she was desperate, documented every crime for 8 months, then unleashed devastating legal action after Victoria's lavish wedding. Result: Victoria arrested, marriage annulled, lost everything, criminal record, working minimum wage. Lily reclaimed her money, built a community center honoring her parents, became a speaker inspiring betrayal survivors, and lived her best life while Victoria faced permanent consequences. Moral: patience and strategy defeat cruelty. The best revenge is building something so meaningful that your betrayer's actions become irrelevant.